Welcome to another episode of Bengals and Brews. I am Dell Altman, joined by Derek Davis, the Orange Arrow. We are scheduled to be joined by Mo Egger. Derek said he just looked up the Reds score. The Reds were winning, I believe, 3-0, which is very, very rare. So Mo might
Very
be
unusual.
Mo might be caught up in this,
Yeah.
and be on here with us for a few minutes. This might be a good. Here comes Mo now, but this might be a good time to just mention real quick about our giveaways, and if anybody
hmm
wants to leave a comment over in the chat about who they want to predict for pick 31, that'll give them a chance to win either the Jackpot Joey grand prize with the flag, the towel, the hat, and the beanie if they pick the correct first pick for the Bengals. If more than one person has the correct pick, we're going to also send them a Bengals and Brews t-shirt. So doesn't hurt to give your prediction. If you win, you can win some free stuff. All right, so now we are going to be joined by Mo Egger. Mo, are you in shock over the Reds having a lead?
They're winning the game right now. I don't know what to do with myself.
Yeah,
I know. We had mentioned something earlier. I said on Monday, I think, how funny would it be to speak to Mo on Saturday, and the Reds still not win a game, and here we are, 2-13 record. It's almost like the Bengals of 2019.
Except there's no Joe Burrow in the offing for the Reds, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
2-14, the Bengals go 2-14, they get Joe Burrow. I'm not sure what the prize is for going 2-14 if you're a baseball team. But hopefully they avoid that fate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's still plenty of season left, but it's not off to a good start, and fans are. But I don't even want to talk baseball right off the bat, if that's all right with everybody else. Get a little break on the baseball. I want to do a little get to know Mo segment here, and most people probably know you pretty well, but I got a few questions for you.
Sure.
Like, how long have you been doing radio now?
I've worked in radio for 25 years. I started in 1997. I've been on the air since 2004. I've had my own show since 2007, and I've been in my current time slot since 2009. So basically my entire adult life I've been in radio, and a good chunk of that obviously doing a show in the afternoon, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, awesome. Now, you were originally from New Jersey, so did you have a favorite team or teams growing up?
Well, I grew up, I was born here. We moved to New Jersey when I was 7. We moved back when I was in high school. So my mom and dad are both from here. My dad was a diehard Reds and Bengals fan. My dad was also a huge UK fan. So he passed on the Reds and Bengals to me. He did not pass on the UK thing. I became a Bearcat fan because I wanted to spite him, because UC played Kentucky right before we moved back. And I didn't understand why, if we rooted for the Reds and Bengals, we didn't root for UC. They played Kentucky. Mm-hmm. Kentucky had Rick Pitino as their coach. I couldn't stand him, so I rooted for UC and became a Bearcat fan in the process. So as a kid, my favorite teams were the Cincinnati teams. Now, we always went to the company my dad worked for. He was always able to get New York Mets tickets. So I had a soft spot in my heart for them growing up. But I just the further I'm removed from that, the less I care. So they made the World Series in 2015, and I thought, man, I'm going to root for the Mets, and I rooted for Kansas City because of Johnny Cueto. So I really can't say that stuck, but I'm a huge Knicks fan to this day. But I was 11 years old when the Bengals made the Super Bowl in 1988. We were still living in New Jersey, and where we lived was right in the epicenter of Giants, Jets, Eagles. Everybody was a fan of one of those three teams. And the Giants had won the Super Bowl 2 years prior. The Eagles had Randall Cunningham, and the Jets were awful. But the Bengals went to the Super Bowl when I was in the 6th grade, living in New Jersey. And so when they lost to San Francisco, I was so despondent. I looked forward to the next day at school so little that my mom let me stay home. So that was kind of cool. But no, just always a Cincinnati fan. So when we moved back, I was excited to get a chance to root for my teams up close, because that wasn't the case from afar during the years that I was in Jersey.
Okay. And then did you have any favorite broadcasters, radio personalities? If you kind of grew up a Reds fan, I mean, we had some really good ones.
Yeah, I wanted to be in radio from the time I was a little kid. And so, the sports part of it came later, quite frankly. I was just, my mom and dad were, again, I'm 44, so this is like the 80s. So there were a lot of car rides between here and Cincinnati. My parents split up. My dad moved to about an hour away, so a lot of car rides going back and forth. And so when I was 8, I wanted a TV in my room. They gave me an alarm clock radio, which, I mean, come on, it's like a huge middle finger. But I just always thought, like, growing up, like, but the people that are on the radio sound like they're having a hell of a lot of fun. So that's something I wanted to do at a very early age. The sports part of it came later because my dad listened to a lot of sports talk radio. And so my favorite announcers growing up were not necessarily play-by-play guys, although certainly, Marty Brenneman, and then as a kid, Marv Albert was the voice of the NBA, and Vince Scully was the voice of baseball, and Pat Summerall was the voice of the NFL. Those guys are like the voices of my youth, but to me, it was always talk radio guys. And so the guys on 700 WLW were guys that I thought, man, I'd like to do that one day. So I'm talking Bob Trumpy and Chris Collinsworth, and later on Andy Furman. And then I listened to a guy in Philadelphia by the name of Steve Fredericks. And this is how big of a dork I was as a kid. And I might be the last human being alive who ever did this, because this is more of a 50s and 60s thing. I love talk radio. I love news radio. I loved AM radio. And I used to sort of scan the dial trying to find people late at night that I could listen to. And so I listened to KMOX radio, and I listened to Mitch Albom in Detroit, WJR. I listened to WCAU in Philadelphia, WFAN in New York. And so there's a lot of like radio broadcasters that I always was fond of and a fan of. But the Marty Brenneman thing, which Reds fan doesn't revere him? So to get a chance to get to know him as a broadcaster has been quite special, because he's somebody that I did revere growing up.
I still remember when I was just a little kid going to the Reds Hall of Fame, and they had that little area where you get to do the play-by-play thing, and I trying to be like Marty and stuff like that, and it was always fun to do that kind of stuff. So.
Sure. Yeah, no, we all did that. My buddies and I would play ball, and I would be, if we were shooting hoops in my driveway, I would be Marv Albert, and if we were playing baseball in the backyard, I would be Vince Scully. And if we were playing football, I would be Pat Summerall. And the kid who's doing that, he's usually the worst kid on the court or the field. So that was me. But that's what I was doing.
And look at you now, though.
Look at this. Yeah.
I was going to say, favorite sport to play growing up, whether that was, organized or just with buddies in the backyard and in the driveway.
Organized baseball. To me, Little League baseball is the absolute best. It's the sport that I love playing organized the most. But with my buddies, my mom put a hoop in the driveway when I was in the 7th grade, somewhere between 7th and 8th grade. And that's all I did. I mean, clear through high school, really. That's all I did. And so I played basketball, organized basketball, played high school basketball. But, the difference between organized basketball and organized baseball, in organized basketball, there's a lot of running. When you're playing with your buddies, you don't have all that crap. So my favorite sport to play with me and my buds, because you can play 1-on-1, you can play 2-on-2, you can play a game of 21, you can play horse. Such things didn't exist as much with baseball, but we had growing up killer wiffle ball games, and that was a lot of fun. But yeah, I still, I think at this time of year, I think being outside shooting hoops in the driveway. So that would be from an unorganized standpoint, that would be my answer.
Yeah, that's probably mine as well. I played Little League, and that was as far as my baseball career went. Because once you got off the tee and all that, I had a player, I'll never forget it. He got beamed right in the eye, just instantly swollen up, and I'm up to bat next. I stayed and played that game and finished that season, but I was done at that point. That point, I said I'm done.
My best friend played when I was in the 3rd grade, and they put him at second base, and he took a one-hopper, and it came up and hit him in the chin, and he had blood coming out of his mouth, and he just walked off the field and just had this look on his face like, I'm not doing this. And we still, I still kind of keep in contact with him, and I still joke, like, he has kids now, like, all right, if they take a one-hopper to the face, what are you going to do? He's like, tell them to do what the hell they want. So
you want to quit right now?
Yeah. Fortunately, I avoided that fate.
That's actually funny you say that, because this past Wednesday, my son Declan had baseball practice, and my wife calls me because I'm at work, and she said Declan got hit by a baseball, and I'm thinking, okay, he took a line drive, 6-year-old, no big deal, kind of thing, and she said no, she said somebody threw it and hit him right in the eye, and I'm like, okay, so how does a guy? And she said like the guy that was playing in the outfield went to throw the ball in, and he was playing like second base or something. Well, he was standing right beside him. Well, I guess when the kid went and threw, it just went like he turned around and it caught him right in the eye. But
Yep.
That kind of stuff happens all the time, and it's been 2 weeks in a row now that my son's had an injury, but he's still playing. So
that's half of it. You're going to get hit. You're going to get hurt. You can't be afraid of the ball. And
now was that the kid who was hitting dingers? Because you were at practice the one day when we were recording.
Yeah, no,
you said there was a 6-year-old hitting over the fence home runs. To me, I thought that was impressive.
No, I said into the grass. So you got your ball diamond, and then you've got your tall grass because nobody's mowed it yet. You know how it is with 6-year-olds and stuff like that. But yeah, he was hitting it into the grass on the fly, and I'm just thinking, man, this kid at 6 years old, he's going places,
And he might. So I assume baseball, is that your favorite sport to cover? That's kind of my last get to know Mo question. Or do you enjoy covering other sports just as much?
Baseball's great because there's a game almost every single day. So, football's the enormity of every single game is awesome. But, I will admit that one of my shortcomings as a host, and God knows I have many, is by the time we get to Wednesday and I have sucked everything I can out of the previous Sunday's game, and yet the next Sunday's game is still 5 days away, 4 days away. I'm not great at that. I'm not really great at anything. But baseball, there's a game every single day. And, let's be honest. I mean, the strategies are relatively simple compared to football. Like, I always love it when somebody complains about play calling from a football coach. Like, you have no idea what goes into calling a play in an NFL game. Whereas baseball, the strategies are pretty simple. It's not that hard to figure out. But so from the standpoint of there being a game every single day when the season is going on, baseball is the best. At the same time, every game in football really means something. And so with baseball, it's a little foolish to get worked up over one game, whereas in the NFL and college football especially, one game can really pivot the entire season. So I don't really know that I've always said that the big three for me, football, baseball, and basketball, they're sort of like my kids. There's times where you like one more than the other. But I love them all equally. And I don't, that's not a cop-out answer. I don't know, like this time of year, the Reds are terrible. So I'm sort of like all in on the draft. Football's like the greatest thing ever. But if the Reds were 13-2, I'd tell you right now, baseball is my favorite. In March, basketball is my favorite. But I mean, from the standpoint of what I do for a living, baseball is the easiest just because there's so much content. And it's a sport. It's a sport that more people played growing up than football. It's just a little bit easier to talk about than football, if you catch my drift.
Yes. Yeah, I was going to say, actually, kind of going into that, what are your favorite phone calls to have during the season? When you're getting callers in, whether it's 1530 or 700 or what, wherever. What are the best fans during a losing Red season or a losing Bengals season?
Well, that's a little bit. It's a little bit different now because the Reds aren't very good and everybody's just talking about ownership, and so we're not talking about the games as much. Yeah. When the Bengals are losing, people just default to some of the same old things, right? Like we stop talking about actual football, and instead it's how much you hate Mike Brown, why you're not going to go to games anymore, all this stuff that there's a place for it, but just gets very tired after a while. When the Reds are bad, people just sort of move on to something else. They just pivot to something else. When the Bengals are bad, they don't pivot to something else. They pivot to some of the same things we've been talking about with the Bengals for years. So what made this past season so much fun professionally was we actually talked about football games. We actually talked about strategies and the next opponent. And, when they're 1-7, we're not doing that. When they're 1-7, it's just complaining about why the coach is still here, the owner, is the team going to move? We're looking ahead of the draft 7 months in advance. When the team is good, as obviously they were this year, there's a lot more focus on the games themselves. And what I love most about sports are the games. And so when a team wins, there tends to be a little bit more focus on the part that I love the most. With baseball, when the Reds are good, there's nothing better. There's nothing better. When they're bad, people just sort of ignore them. And I mean, I have a lot of experience in doing this because it's felt like for most years of my talk radio career, certainly most of the last 10, what we've done is by the time training camp gets here for the Bengals is the Reds don't even come up. And to me, the best would be to have sort of a balance, at least in August and September, of both teams, because the Reds are good and the Bengals are just getting underway.
Yeah. 2015 probably was then a really great year, right? Wasn't that when the Reds had Latos and all those guys? And we really thought they were going to make a deep run. I could be wrong on the year, but
2012 was awesome.
12.
Because the Reds made it to, well, they won the division. They ran away with the division. And the Bengals were coming off a playoff season. And so there was a lot to talk about. I mean, and people were really excited about the Reds and, excited about the direction the Bengals were going. And that's really when it's fun, is when they're both good. And then you add to it, UC football right now is really, really good. But yeah, that's the best part, is when both teams are what I think we do way too often. And I understand why we do it, is we look at the failures of one. And so like right now, everybody's down on the Reds. Well, then we drag the Bengals into the conversation. And there have been times where the roles have been reversed. I don't necessarily need to do that as a fan. If the Reds are bad, I don't need to point out how good the Bengals are to highlight how bad the Reds are. I can just point to the standings, and the same for the Bengals. So, but ideally for me, the teams are all relevant. They all matter. They always have legit championship aspirations. And unfortunately, it's been rare that we could say that about both teams simultaneously.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
Let's get into a little Bengals draft talk, if you don't mind. I know most people probably say top 3 needs, but I'll get yours first and see if they're similar.
Well, the word need is pretty subjective. Like, and this is how I put it. Let's say the draft got canceled, right? And the NFL said you can't acquire players. Your roster today is what you need. I think we'd feel pretty good, right? So there's not a lot of needs, right? Like, so to me, a need is, if the season started today, is this team screwed? There's nowhere they're really screwed. That's a really great place to be. If the season started today, you would not look at this team and go, "Oh my God, this hole is gonna kill them." Yeah. You might say, "God, I wish they were a little bit better here. I wish they had a little bit more depth."
Yeah. Rotational depth is kind of the big key that they need.
So the word need to me is really subjective. To me, it's about wants. I want a 3 technique that you could plug in and basically replace Larry Ogunjobi.
Curtis Brooks.
Curtis Brooks, there you go. I want, maybe more than anything, a top-end corner, top-end-ish corner, or at least a corner with top-end potential that could play well enough immediately to turn the group of corners they have into a bona fide strength. And I would like somebody else to add to the left guard mix. Just to, number one, create depth. Number 2, give me a really good top-end camp battle for the left guard spot. Those, to me, are the 3 things that I want the most. I don't think I would categorize any of those as needs. I think we all understand that they need cornerback depth, but you're not like, oh my God, if they go to battle with Apple, Hilton, and Awuzie, they're screwed. Not at all. I think they certainly need some defensive tackle depth, but bringing back BJ Hill was vital. And the moment it looked like they were going to lose Larry Ogunjobi, who I guess they could still get, you felt like, okay, they're going to be fine-ish here. And, certainly they've spent a lot of money on the offensive line. I guess the other thing would be, if you look at the safety position, there's a huge question about what they're going to be doing moving forward beyond 2022 with Bates and Bell. But the 3 things I want the most are the ability to turn the cornerback position into like just this position of strength because of how amazingly deep it is, with a guy that has a lot of long-term upside, a 3 technique, and one more guy to plug in the left guard back.
Yeah, I think corner and the 3 tech, but also we were talking to Joe Goodberry last night, and he said he could see him taking another 5 tech because they played so many 5-man fronts last year along the defensive line during the season. So losing Lario and BJ Hill both at times were like starters with how much they were playing that 5-guy defensive line. So it almost – because I've been thinking throughout most of the process, okay, best corner that's there. It's solid corners, solid traits at least for corners, solid upside. Who knows how good they'll be once they get there. But I'm almost wondering if D tackle 3-tech doesn't make more sense at 31 as we get closer because there's only 2 or 3 guys that really would fit that role.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we can use what they've done recently as a guide. And what they've done on defense has been 2 years ago they needed linebackers, they took 3. Last year they needed edge rusher, they took 3. So chances are what they do at corner is not going to be limited to one guy. What they do at the on the defensive line is not going to be limited to one guy, especially if they accumulate more picks.
Yeah.
That's probably, I mean, they're going to do that at one of those 2 positions, right? Not take a guy in the first round and then probably stack multiple picks rounds 2 through 6 at that certain position. But yeah, I mean, to a degree, they haven't taken a defensive lineman in the first round in 21 years. And so it's probably time to really make that position a priority. At the same time, they've done a good job historically of getting guys via other means that haven't necessarily been the first round of the draft. But I think I think chances are it's going to be one of those 3 positions and probably more defense in the offensive line. But yeah, I mean, they need depth. They need some help. Look, you obviously could always use edge rush help. I don't know that I necessarily buy into the whole, well, just let Osai, get healthy and he's the guy. I think that can be the case. That's a lot to rely on for a guy who's played 0 real NFL snaps. But again, what do I want in the draft? I want help up the middle. Give me one more corner. Give me some offensive line depth and a guy that could maybe start in the short term.
Yeah, I think that's a good list of needs. Pretty similar to what we have. The only other one I would throw in would probably be tight end, just with Hayden Hurst on a 1-year deal.
Sure.
And Drew Sample also on the last year of his deal currently. So that could, and that may be a 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick, just somebody you can develop. I think it's a good draft for those middle rounds with tight ends.
Yeah, I had on Dane Brugler from The Athletic, and I said, what about this year's draft class at tight end? Because yeah, I mean, in the short term, I think Hayden Hurst is going to be fine. Drew Sample has been a little bit of a letdown for people who thought he was going to turn into this great pass-catching tight end. I think long term, you're looking for somebody who's a little bit more athletic than CJ, and can maybe provide some help in the short term, certainly some depth. But he liked what is available in this draft at that position. So that is certainly something that we're going to be paying attention to moving forward.
Do you think the mistake on the Sample pick was, and I am talking like I love Drew Sample again, but
you do.
Do you think that they took a guy that they thought was a solid blocker and said, well, we can teach him how to catch? Or do you think it was just kind of they needed a blocking tight end, so that's what they went with?
I think that's it. I think they said, what do we need right now? And remember, they drafted Drew in 2019, right? So what is their team at that point? It's Joe Mixon and Andy Dalton. This is before Joe Burrow. It's before T. Higgins. So what's the identity of their team going to be? They probably really, in the short term at least, really like to be good at running the football. This is a very overly simplistic way of looking at things. So, all right, let's fortify our ability to run the ball by getting a really good blocking tight end. And they had sort of tried the whole Tyler Eifert thing, which for a variety of reasons really didn't work. And so I think they said, here's a blocking tight end. We're going to use him in this particular role. And if we can teach this dude to become a pass catcher, great. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that philosophy. I just wouldn't have done it in the 2nd round. Like, I don't think Drew Sample's been a bad player, but he hasn't played to the level of a 2nd round guy. Like, if Drew Sample was what he has been these last 3 years, but you took him in round 4 or 5, I think you're like, all right, pretty good pick. Unfortunately, where they picked him relative to the production makes it feel like a bad pick. And I don't makes it feel like he's a bad player. Wasn't a great pick, but there's room for a guy who's good at this one particular thing. And I think Drew Sample can be a valuable piece to an offense that's looking for a blocking tight end. I don't know that he's a great fit here. And I certainly don't think you can look at their position group right now and go, God, moving forward, they're going to lock in Drew Sample, and he's suddenly going to, help replace those 49 receptions that CJ Uzomah had last year.
That's a great point. He fit better for an offense that we used to run when he was
Yeah.
drafted. Now that we have Joe Burrow, he may not be the best fit as a tight end, and that's why you see a more athletic guy like Hayden Hurst is what they kind of targeted in free agency.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Uzama also. He was a 5th-round pick the year we took Dawson Knox as a 3rd-round pick, or not Dawson Knox. Derek, you got that name on my mind. You know who I'm talking about?
I wish we took Dawson Knox.
He was on the Jets last year. He caught a touchdown pass. I can't
Tyler
think of
Croft.
Tyler Croft.
Tyler Croft.
Yeah.
Rutgers,
So we took him, I think, 3rd round, and then doubled up and got CJ in that same draft. I'm pretty sure. So CJ had that time to develop being a 5th-round pick, and CJ didn't necessarily have a great first 2 or 3 years. And then we've seen him develop and become what he is. And like you were saying, Mo, that kind of goes to your point with Drew Sample. If he would have been a 5th-round pick, everyone's going to be more patient. There's not all eyes on him, 2nd-round pick. But that was a weird year in general. That was the year Zach Taylor's coming from the Super Bowl as an assistant coach. They were couldn't find a D coordinator forever, it seemed like. And I don't think they got a really good draft process throughout that one. It seems like now the last couple of years they've really found their stride. Like, obviously, Duke Tobin's a big part of it. But we rely on our coaching staff, and I think they've hit their stride. So I think that's good going forward for us drafting. What do you think?
Well, that first year, the assistant coaches met each other for the first time at the combine. That's how long the process took, and that's not entirely their fault. They wanted Zach Taylor. Zach was on a team that made the Super Bowl, and so it pushed everything back. But I mean, yeah, that year was doomed to fail since well before it began for a lot of different reasons, none of which have anything to do with the current coach. But I mean, I think at that point they were just sort of trying to cobble a team together to give them the best possible chance at having a competitive team in 2019. The team itself, the franchise itself, had no real identity. Now you have one. Right now, we know what the identity of this team is. It's very, very obvious. And so, but the identity of the Bengals in 2019 was still offensively. We have a quarterback who's okay, but he's not great. So how do we win with this guy with a first-time head coach? And it was, we're going to try to run the ball a bunch. And the way you do that is you get a guy who could block for him, and that's what they thought Drew Sample was.
Yeah.
There we go.
I want to get a prediction before we get off here. A couple more minutes if you got it. For pick 31, even if it's a couple players, you don't even necessarily have to just narrow it down to 1, 2 or 3 players that you think could be our first selection.
Or do you think they'll trade back, and if so, with what team?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know that I'm equipped. I don't know that I'm equipped to answer that part of it. I think they would like to. I think that would be if you said to Duke Tobin, "What does your ideal draft night look like?" He would say, "Thursday, we don't have a pick." I disagree with that because I value, to me, you can get a first-round player that 5th year, that by the time that 5th year comes around, Joe Burrow is going to be getting his, Jamar Chase is going to be getting his, maybe T. Higgins is going to be getting his. There's going to be a premium on high-end, cheap talent. That 5th year could be huge. So I'm a little bit less dismissive of that 5th year than some. To me, if you can get a really good player and a guy that has a really good chance of helping you in the short term, I don't dismiss the 5th year, which is what you get with a first rounder. So I think that's what they would like to do. It wouldn't be my first choice. It feels to me like the name that is mentioned most is Kyer Elam. I just get the sense for everybody who wants them to take Tyler Linderbaum, which I wouldn't be opposed to. It just
right on cue in one of the comments.
Yeah, it feels like they're lukewarm. Like you don't get the sense that they are as in love with him as a lot of people from the outside are. That doesn't mean they won't take him, and it doesn't mean he won't be a very good player for them or whoever he goes to. I just there are too many people who are close to the team who are not knocking down the narrative of the short arms, right? So that's telling to me. Again, there is going to be a team, and maybe it ends up being the Bengals, who's like, we don't care about his reach. We care about the amount of experience that he picked up. We care about the level that he played at Iowa, and we love what we saw on tape. But I just get the sense that A, the measurables aren't what they love, and B, that they would like to draft. If they're going to take a lineman in the first round, an interior lineman in the first round, I think they would like somebody who's played guard, and he hasn't. Again, that doesn't mean they're going to pick him, but it doesn't feel to me like there's a lot of folks who have sort of portrayed this as, if he's there, you got to take him. Maybe they do. I don't think it's that cut and dry for them. I think you look at their recent history. They haven't taken a corner in the first round of the draft since William Jackson III. That was 6 years ago. That's forever ago. And they've done a really good job of putting together a defensive backfield without using first round picks. I have a sense that's going to end. And so the name most connected to them at that position is Kyer Elam. So that's my guess. It's certainly not going to surprise me if they do take Linderbaum, but I don't get the sense that they are as all in on him as a lot of outsiders are.
Yeah, I've had that same question and feeling as well, so I'm right there with you on that. A lot of people the talent, like on my board, I have him 11th overall, so yeah, the talent's great, but at the same point in time, he's center only, and Jackson Carman, they're still high on him. You could even still bring in a Quentin Spain at left guard to compete, and right. I think they like Ted Karras at center. So it just all the signs to me doesn't point Linderbaum like some people want it to.
Yeah, and you said something there that I think is important because a lot of people have said, well, you just kick Karras to guard. Well, you can. I think they want him to play center. I mean, they've said he's a center over. Right. I think they go, great. We have our choice between playing Ted Karras at center or Tyler Linderbaum. We want Ted Karras. Okay, well, then Linderbaum hasn't played guard. It doesn't mean they can't teach him. I just don't get the sense they really want to do that. Now, I still think you can find a lineman to plug in and be a part of that derby to be the starting left guard, but I think they drafted Ted Karras to play center. It's like, people aren't satisfied with that answer sometimes. It's like when the Reds had Michael Lorenzen, and people would say, well, how come he's not an outfielder? And I would say, because he's a pitcher. The Reds think he's a pitcher. Well, you might not, but they do. And I think Ted Karras is sort of the same way. Yes, he could play guard. Maybe they will ultimately have him play some guard. I think they signed him and acquired him to play center, and I think they're very comfortable with him doing that.
Okay. Yeah, great answer. I feel very similar. Derek, anything Reds you want to finish up with before we let Mo go here?
Yeah, real quick, right off the cuff. Baseball town or football town?
Well, I don't know. I mean, when people talk about, well, Cincinnati's a baseball town, I don't know what that means. I don't know what right now it's a football town because the Bengals just went to the Super Bowl and the biggest star in town is the quarterback of the team. And right now it feels like that franchise could do no wrong. So clearly right now it is a football town. I also think the fact that the NFL is so huge, the fact that the NFL, there's so many more people gambling on it, playing fantasy football, all that sort of stuff, that I just, football is king. Football is king in this country, and Cincinnati is a part of this country. So I think football is king. You add the dimension of the Bengals being good last year and go to the Super Bowl. I think it's clearly a football town. But if the Reds ever do get good again, and you're being fair if you think they never will, if the Reds ever do get good again, the people will be passionate about it and the ballpark can be full and, it'd be awesome. But it just right now, I mean, it's, you heard if you watched or went to opening day, you heard Who Day ringing all throughout Great American Ballpark. That's pretty damn telling.
Yeah.
And I agree.
The one other thing I had on the baseball situation was who do you think has more fans currently at the stadium, the Reds or the Dayton Dragons? Because it looks like the Dayton Dragons it looks like they had a pretty good crowd up there.
Dayton Dragons draw really well. They had a waiting list just to buy single game tickets for years and years and years. And so I think it's going to be interesting. The Reds have had good weather and the Cardinals in this weekend, and they still haven't drawn more than 28,000. The weather's not going to be as great. The Padres are here Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I think those crowds are going to be quite low and perhaps Dayton Dragons-esque.
Yeah. All right. Well, Mo, tell it. I'm sure everybody knows, but go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you if you got any kind of draft specials coming up this week or anything else you want to plug.
We have a show every day, ESPN 1530 from 3 to 6. We are doing our draft show. It's I'm a little bit all over the place. So here you go. Write this down. There'll be a quiz later. I'm at Long Necks and Wilder 3 to 6 on Thursday, and then I'm at Frickers with Tony Pike. As part of the 700 WLW draft show. Tony and I are on together from 8 to 10. The draft show goes from 6 to 1 a.m. And then Tony and I are at Twin Peaks in Westchester for a draft edition. of the Tony and Mo football show on Friday at 3:00.
Busy man.
Awesome. I
Busy
love
man.
it.
All right, Mo. And thank you for your time.
Oh, you got it, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Yep.
Bye.
See you guys. Yep.
See you. Real quick for you, Dale. I was going to run this by Mo, but I know we was kind of cutting on.
Yeah, I didn't want to. Yeah, I didn't want to cut into his time anymore.
But I just checked the Bet Online odds real quick, and this was going into the talking about the Bengals winning the going to the Super Bowl last year, and I want to know why do you think right now the Bengals are currently the number 5 seed on odds to win the AFC Championship? Right now, they got the Buffalo Bills first, Kansas City, the Chargers third, the Broncos, and then the Bengals.
Well, I think until you go and you get back there and you do it multiple years in a row, you're always going to be doubted. But part of it also is the Super Bowl hangover has been a real thing. The team that loses in the Super Bowl a lot of years comes out and, they have a down year or two and then bounce back or whatever. But I'd say it's a combination of those things. And like the Bengals, everyone's just used to them being bad for so long. Again, first pick, we had the 5th pick. It's going to take more than 1 year for those Vegas odds to rise up. But I see no reason, like Mo said, we got a team that we're just filling in depth pieces for the most part in this draft. Yeah. So I could see us, and we have Joe Burrow. When you have Joe Burrow, you're always going to have a chance to go make a Super Bowl run.
And maybe I was going to say, maybe that's why Kansas City is still up there. But I'm looking at Kansas City, and all I'm seeing are pieces lost, not pieces gained, really. And yes, they have Patrick Mahomes, but other than that, Travis Kelce, I'll give him that. But why would they still be the number 2 pick? I mean, Buffalo Bills are plus 425, and Kansas City is plus 590. And then you've got plus 750 for the Chargers, plus 975 for the Broncos, and plus 1,000 for the Bengals. So if you're a betting man and you want to bet on the Bengals, get in there like swimwear. But
I honestly like being behind the Broncos. Like I was trying to let each of those. Bills probably would be my favorite. Kansas City, I guess it's just they've proven they're always there. They're always playing for AFC Championship. They've been, they've done it a few years now. So I get why you keep them up there, even though they did lose Tyreek Hill. And then you said the Chargers, who remade their defense. They brought in Khalil Mack, J.C. Jackson, so that's a very real. I understand why they're up there. Now having them ahead of us, you can make that argument that doesn't make any sense. I would probably say the Bengals should be 3rd, and then probably San Diego 4th, and then Denver to me should be 5th at the earliest. They brought in Russell Wilson, but okay.
In all honesty, I mean, maybe I'm biased, but looking at things, I could see the Bengals as high as number 2 because they've beat the Chiefs twice.
For sure.
Year. And I do like the Chargers. I love what they've done on defense. I love Justin Herbert. I'm not a Justin Herbert truther like all these guys saying he's better than Burrow, obviously. But and then the Denver Broncos, they brought in Russell Wilson to a team that literally was a quarterback away. So, I mean, I guess I could see it, but I'm just looking at the plus 590 versus plus 1,000. I just don't see that far of a gap in my opinion.
No. I mean, go put some money down on the Bengals. It worked out for a lot of people last year.
It worked out very well for me last year.
I'm not big on, I just haven't gambled a lot. Not that I have anything against it. I haven't, but I wish I would have. I wish I would have put some money down on the Bengals.
I know. Sure. I told Sarah because she went to Vegas last year in August, and I told her, I said, please, for the love of God, put $100 down for the Bengals to win the Super Bowl for me. And she didn't do it. I told her, I said, do you realize, I said, because she's going this August as well for her paparazzi thing. But I told her, I said, do you realize how much money you could have to play with if you would have just made that bet?
You're gonna have a whole sheet written out of bets for her to make when she goes back to Vegas.
I will.
All right, man. Well, we'll go ahead and end this episode. I thought Mo was awesome. I mean, great
really
answers. And I'm so glad he joined us because, I mean, good Lord, that man is so busy with all his radio appearances and then this coming weekend he's going to be so busy. So that was awesome that he gave little old us some time here. So we really appreciate that, Mo. Anything you want to help sign off, Derek?
Yeah, real
Get the
quick.
music queued up
We
after.
are going to, or we're giving away that that Bengals and Brews T-shirt. I'll make it easy on everybody. I'll just make a post about it, and we'll just do a winner on Saturday's show for the all the gear for the 31st pick overall, what everybody decides to pick on that, and then we'll give away that T-shirt as well. But yeah, just before we get off, next Saturday we're going to have the draft recap show with I think Anthony Kazenza,
Maybe even live. Anthony said he may even be live covering the draft from Vegas, so that could be really cool.
Yep. It'll be a lot of fun, and I know a couple other people as well said they might hop on, so that should be a lot of fun.
Yep, for sure. And Houday Hoss draft in 4 days. I'm pumped, man. I love the draft. It's one of my favorite times of the year. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe. Houday.